What's up guys, Cameron Brown with Mindfulness Media back again with another video, and today we're going to be knocking out podcast episode 7, Health and Wellness as a Videographer. So for me, this is a pretty important topic, and I feel like it's one that is pretty regularly overlooked in our industry. As photographers and videographers, I feel like there's a lot of things that we tend to focus on first, or that come to the forefront of our minds when we are just living our day-to-day lives. So that's things like editing, that's things like the newest camera gear popping up, that's things like new filmmaking techniques or new lenses, all those things I feel like are very popular and very prevalent when it comes to the mind of a photographer or videographer. However, there are other items on our list that don't always make it to the forefront that are just as important. And for me, your health and your wellness is definitely one of these items. So I wanted to take today's episode to kind of carve out a little bit of time and go over this subject and this topic. I know it's not directly related to filmmaking or photography or anything of that matter, but since we are a podcast and a community dedicated to inspiring, educating, and entertaining all of our creatives in this area, I figured this was pretty important and a lot of us could relate to it. So our focus for today, we're going to be highlighting some of the main issues that I feel like a lot of us tend to run into, and some not so main issues that may pop up here and there, and hopefully give you guys a couple tips and tricks and just some things that you can take away from today's podcast to implement into your workflow and hopefully improve your own health and wellness. Let's get into it. So the first thing that I want to cover is your physical health and your performance, just kind of like in an overall general sense here. Your physical stamina as a videographer or a photographer is pretty important. I mean, you don't have to be like an Olympic athlete per se, but obviously we spend a lot of long hours on our feet carrying around heavy equipment, and having good fitness levels helps in maintaining your stamina throughout these long shoots. So, keeping you focused, making sure, your legs and your back and stuff like that isn't hurting. And overall, just making sure that you are able to focus more so on the task at hand instead of focus on grabbing a next drink of water and taking a sit-down break. For me, where my problems first started arising when I went full-time was I started noticing that on longer shoots, these shoots seemed like they were becoming way more difficult than they should have. Like, I felt really, really tired and just wiped after each one of my shoots. Obviously, this wasn't good because, number one, I'm like 25 to 30 years old. So I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, all right, I'm not that old yet. I shouldn't be getting this winded or this tired from, just doing my job and showing up on my day-to-day. But the other thing is that obviously our job demands it. There's not really any getting around it. So while there is a difference per shoot for some people, like some people may have more of a setup and film type job. Some people may have more of a run and gun type job. Regardless, it's still going to be in there to some capacity that you're going to need some degree of physical stamina that's comparable to someone. Obviously, this wasn't good because of what our job demands. So that's, again, things like super long hours on our feet. Anyone who's ran a long 8-hour shoot day knows that it's going to be tiring, and the next day you're probably going to be pretty tired yourself. So long hours on our feet, lugging heavy equipment around for setup and for breakdown and stuff like that. And that's just for the setup and breakdown. You're also maybe having to lug around some equipment for your filming or for your photographs and stuff like that. So you need that stamina. So once I dialed in my exercise routine and I continued staying consistent with it, I noticed a pretty big change in my stamina. Obviously, I still felt the physical exertion from the jobs, but I was no longer coming home and like immediately needing to take a nap. Or just completely zonked on the couch for the rest of the evening, that type of stuff. The second one is injury prevention. So strength training and proper fitness routines can help prevent common injuries like back strains, repetitive strains from carrying around gear, tweaks in like your joints and stuff like that. All that stuff can be prevented if we're doing some regular strength training and conditioning, right? So what I started noticing as the first problem was that my body was very uncomfortable after shoots. In particular, my back and my knees really started hurting, and my neck and my shoulders, I started getting these like twinges that would like shoot down my arm and stuff. Like, And really all it was just having tight muscles and doing long shoot days, but not coming home and, stretching things out or training those muscles regularly in the gym so that they'd be used to lifting those heavy loads. All that stuff was starting to accumulate. It wasn't just on shoot days either. I also started to feel this after long days in the office or long days editing. So if I was at my computer for 5 or 6 hours, 7 or 8 hours in the day, knocking out a project for a client or just doing some office work, answering emails, all that stuff that we end up doing. I noticed that when I would be done and I would step away from the computer, I felt very, very stiff, and things like my legs and my hamstrings and my shoulders and all that stuff were just really tight and did not feel good. So to remedy this, obviously, I had to start doing lots of mobility work. So I started incorporating some daily yoga into my routine. I started incorporating some get up and stretch breaks from my office and stuff like that. I'd get up and I would go walk a lap around my neighborhood or something like that, or just get up and move around the house a little bit, just to give my body a little bit of a breather from whatever I was doing. And obviously those are referencing for if I was home. So if I was out on the job or something, it still applies, but just in a slightly different manner. Instead of having get up and stretch breaks, I'm already up and moving. So oftentimes I would just kind of take 5 or something like that. And I would include it in the time that I would be setting up for the next shot or something, or that I would be moving from one location to another. Those things, it doesn't take much. It's not like you need a full 30-minute stretching session during that time. It's more so about just giving yourself a quick little 5 minutes or something, or maybe even 2 minutes or something, just to get up and stretch your arms out, give yourself a neck roll or something, move the legs around, or if you've been moving around all day, sit down for a second instead. That's really what it's about. Following that, we have energy levels. So obviously a healthy lifestyle with regular exercise and a pretty good balanced diet is gonna boost your overall energy levels. So this is gonna make it much easier to handle the physically demanding side of what comes with being a photographer or a videographer. So in terms of my energy levels, I also noticed that these felt very, very low. There was one point where I was literally consuming up to 3 big mugs of coffee a day. And I know for some of my heavy coffee drinkers out there, I'm a big coffee drinker myself. I love coffee. My wife loves coffee as well. So again, I'm not trying to say that you should be replacing coffee. If you enjoy it, if it's a part of your day that makes you feel good and keeps you going, then for sure do it. But obviously, there are some red flags if we're relying super heavily on it, like I ended up doing at one point, to the point where you're having 3 or 4 cups in excess per day. In terms of my diet was okay. I wasn't eating fast food every day per se, but I also wasn't necessarily eating the cleanest. And on top of that, I wasn't always eating as much as I should have. So that also directly affected energy levels as well. So to remedy this, I just started taking vitamins and making a stronger effort to clean up my diet and actually eat all the calories that I needed in a day. A little side note here, I recently ordered Huel. They're not sponsoring this podcast or me in any way, shape, or form, so I'm not getting any sort of, monetary value out of it. But for myself, I'm just listing it and showing you guys as an example for a solution. As a photographer and a videographer, I'm pretty busy throughout the day, and that whole forgetting to eat thing that I just mentioned is not going to take you very far. So I ordered Huel as an option for myself, just to get in my calories a little bit easier and make sure that I was getting the nutrients and stuff that I needed. I'm not advising that you take Huel in any way, shape, or form. You can try it out. If you like it and it works for you, great. If not, then just focus on, getting in your food and your calories in whatever way is best for you. The important thing, again, is just making sure that you're eating. Overall, once I was able to lock in better nutrition and kind of combine that with regular exercise, that significantly helped impact and boost my energy levels. And it also significantly impacted my sleep levels, which we'll get to here in a second. Last thing I want to touch on before we go into more of the mental and cognitive and sleep aspects of physical health and wellness is just your flexibility and mobility. Obviously, your nutrition and your strength and all that stuff, that's all very important. But if you don't do anything else, you just decide to pick one of these things to focus on first, I really feel like the flexibility and the mobility, especially for photographers and videographers, is something that you will feel the most immediate benefits from right out the gate. Obviously, like we talked about earlier, a lot of photographers and videographers, we pretty much do the same thing in rotation, right? So if we are not out shooting, lugging around our heavy equipment or something like that, setting up and breaking down gear, setting up and breaking down our camera setups and all that stuff, what's the other thing we're doing? We probably are back home in the office, plugging away, working, answering emails, editing projects, maybe working on the website, posting on social media. Like, it's always one of the two things, right? What that results in is, again, you going out and putting your body under physical stress from working outside on a job, and then coming back and working at your desk where you're just doing this all day. Your shoulders are all hunched up. You've probably got some poor posture and all that stuff, and it's just not a good recipe for good health. Basically, a quick fix that I did for this was just making sure that I dialed in my mobility training and everything. I did a really big focus on making yoga a consistent practice every morning. And I also incorporated some more mobility training and things into my daily routine to help offset a lot of that sitting and a lot of that physical labor and work outside in the field. Moving on to topic number 2, let's talk about mental health and your cognitive functioning, right? So your mental clarity. Regular exercise has been shown to improve cognitive function, which can enhance creativity, problem solving, essential skills, all that fun stuff when it comes to our craft. So for me, exercise helps with my mental clarity in a number of ways. If we rewind back a little bit, as I stated, I was working okay before, but as I mentioned, I still needed like 3 big cups of coffee a day to stay like awake and alert per se. I also was struggling to focus and get through tasks. So like I would run into this weird issue where like some days I would feel like I was like knocking things off the to-do list, and then other days it would take me like almost the entire work shift, so like maybe 5-6 plus hours to knock out a set of tasks that I feel like normally would have taken me maybe like 2 or 3. And so what I realized was like I just had a lot of brain fog. I didn't feel like I was getting enough rest, and I just wasn't clear. Now that I have locked into a more regular exercise routine, and like I said, I've been eating more clean food sources of food and nutrients and all that stuff, when I'm leading up to a workout and once I get one done, I feel great and I feel very clear and focused. And obviously this helped with regulating my sleep, which in turn boosted my sleep quality. Number 2 on mental health and cognitive function that I wanted to touch on real quick was just the stress regulation that comes with regular exercise and taking care of yourself, right? So obviously in our line of work, depending on what we're doing, we can be in some pretty high stress situations, shooting weddings or handling events and stuff like that. Anyone who's done that type of stuff knows that that stuff can definitely take a lot out of you, and it can definitely raise your stress levels up pretty high. So that being said, having something where you can go and you can release that stress is very important. When it comes to this, people tend to have a lot of different outlets. Some people go and have a drink. Some people go and they meditate. Some people go and, do whatever. I'm here to propose to you that exercise is a great outlet for stress relief. It allows you to work on your own physical health and well-being, while at the same time, releasing some stress, clearing your mind, and just overall putting yourself in a better state. The next thing I want to touch on is improved focus. So obviously when you're working out, if you're doing cardio or strength training, whatever it may be, you need to focus to some degree on these exercises. Obviously, the first reason for that is because you don't want to just be goofing off in the gym. You could hurt yourself or something like that. The second reason for that is because you obviously want to get quality out of the time that you're spending in the gym. So how I found that this translates over to work and over to day-to-day life is a lot of times that same concentration, that same focus that I exercise, no pun intended, in the gym, directly correlates and kind of shows up in my work and in my day-to-day job as well. So I noticed that my focus improved quite a bit when I started exercising regularly and doing my cardio and, doing yoga and just doing all my stuff for myself. Sleep quality is obviously another big one. I had touched on this a little bit earlier in the podcast, but regular exercise can help improve sleep quality, ensuring that, whatever that you're doing, you're going to feel well rested for, and it'll be much easier to rest when it's time to actually rest, per se. So one of the biggest differences I noticed in particular was my sleep quality. And I don't think that my sleep quality before was necessarily bad, but I would always hit these afternoon lulls where I would have to take naps. Again, that 3 cups of coffee thing would come into play. Like, I just didn't feel like I was my sharpest. I'd also have random nights where I just wouldn't feel like I was tired, and then I would stay up all night and then obviously be super tired in the morning, and it just felt like my sleep schedule just wasn't really set and was off. So once I started exercising more again, my body kind of synced back into like a natural rhythm. It was naturally more tired when it was actually time to go to sleep. And because of that, I felt like I rested better when I was sleeping. And then when I woke up the next day, I felt like I was just 100% pretty much. I went from averaging like 6-ish hours or so to about 7 or 8. And that made my productivity skyrocket. In addition to my productivity skyrocketing, it also really helped with my creative inspiration. Like a lot of creatives, I get inspiration from external stimuli. So for me, sometimes it's things like listening to music or watching movies or playing games or something like that that really gets my brain going. But a lot of times it's also like moving my body that helps my brain just for some reason think of some of my best ideas. So when I started sleeping more and exercising regularly, I noticed that I was getting really, really, really good downloads of creative ideas for reels or creative problem solving for different things that I would experience on shoots. It just was making me feel way more inspired because I was out moving my body. I was getting out in different environments, going to the gym, working out at home. Overall, again, it was really, really helpful for my creativity. Okay, shifting gears off of the mental aspects of health and wellness, I want to talk a little bit more about the professional impact that it has on your career and the longevity of your career, right? Longevity in your career. Obviously, maintaining good health can ensure that you have a longer, more sustainable career, especially in a physically demanding industry like being a videographer, being a cinematographer, being a photographer, all that stuff. This definitely could not be any truer. I have plenty of colleagues and coworkers that I've worked with, that I partner with on jobs regularly, and without a doubt, it's one of the most common discussions that comes up in a joking manner, of course, but also in a very serious undertone of just things like, oh, like my back hurts, or oh, my knees are giving out, I can't get that shot or that angle like I used to, oh, my elbow, my shoulder, it's an unavoidable topic of discussion. This is a majorly important part of just taking care of your physical health and well-being. I have plenty of colleagues and coworkers that are kind of split down the middle, right? So there's one side of them that definitely struggle with work-related injuries or some type of physical ailment or something that, again, was in their control, but maybe they just didn't take the best care of that injury or ailment. And then I also have coworkers who are the same age and who have little to no problems because they exercise regularly and they put a much bigger emphasis on their physical health and well-being. So again, it's not something to take lightly, and it's not something to ignore per se. It definitely is a very important part of the job, and it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter who you are or what your background was. If you don't pay attention to it, it's probably going to take a toll, right? Another kind of area that I wanted to touch on here that I've personally experienced some pros in is your professional image. So just being fit and healthy can help enhance your professional image, and showing clients that you take care of yourself and your health can help give them a subconscious understanding of how you handle your work and your business. Now, before we jump into this, I'm not trying to say that it's a direct correlation of it, meaning if you, for example, don't want to go to the gym and become a bodybuilder, then that makes you a poor videographer. That's not what I'm trying to say. To be honest, I felt like these were minor things before, but I slowly noticed that they definitely did count. Physical appearance is a thing, and being in shape and showing you take care of yourself can have a positive impact on the professionalism of your brand or your image. I've noticed it myself in the nicest and kindest way possible. It's just another one of those items that gives you the confidence to show up as your best self. And when you're confident and you feel like you're showing up as your best self, that's when your professional image shines. Piggybacking off of professional image, it can definitely affect your clients' impressions as well. I've definitely experienced it myself where, again, clients have directly complimented me without me really even meeting them, just on my physical appearance. And these are things like, oh man, like you look like you're a sharp dude. Yo, bro, you look like you're in the gym, dog. Like you look like you handle business, like that type of stuff. I've gotten those little comments here and there that, again, like don't necessarily make or break a client relationship in any way, shape, or form. But it's also something that's very important to notice, that it does add to the toolbox when it's available. So why not use it? I do think that physical appearance is a part of it, but I think overall it's more so what's associated with it, which is things like qualities for self-discipline, reliability, accountability, etc. Like I mentioned, it's just another tool in your box that helps speak for the values of yourself and the business that you represent. Straying a little bit away from physical exercise and appearance, going back to more of the mental aspects of things, I want to touch some more on your work environment and your balance, right? Your work-life balance, emphasizing the importance of maintaining a healthy work-life balance, is extremely important. One of the biggest things that I used to experience here in this category of my health and wellness was burnout. I would get screen fry from looking at screens for too long. I didn't really feel like I had any sort of way to refresh anywhere because my brain and my mind and my body and everything was just so focused on work. And so what that ended up doing was like I said, it just burnt me out. I would have days where I would try to work and I would try to get through things, but no matter how hard I tried, I just didn't have anything left in me. So I would get literally nothing done, even though I spent the entire day working. So even if you try to push through burnout, you're probably not going to be creating quality work. You're probably not going to be able to get very much done. It's just not a good place to be. So when you're able to shift off of that mentally and get into a place where you're putting in solid hours at work and you're taking care of your body and yourself and your personal wants and needs and all that stuff in your off time and everything, it's just the balance and the mental clarity that you get from it and the feeling of accomplishment and how that returns back into your work is just priceless. So I was feeling burnout because I was essentially just kind of slaving away to my job. And don't get me wrong, sometimes as an entrepreneur, you're gonna have to put in those hours. Like we just work a different type of job than what a 9-to-5 or something else may demand of you. But what's important to help kind of offset those demanding times where you do have to slave away to the job, where you do have to put in those extra hours, is you need to carve out time that's specifically designated for you, something that you can do or things that are on your list that just refill your cup, that make you feel better and recharged and ready to come back to work at 100%. It does so much more for you than what I just described earlier in the podcast and everything. So if you're neglecting this, if you're not feeling like you're giving this its due diligence, I highly advise that you revisit the drawing board here and try to rework this into your daily routine. So lastly here, I just want to touch a little bit more directly on nutrition and lifestyle. I know I talked a little bit before about my eating habits and stuff like that, but we're going to deep dive a little bit more into this just so that we can cover some of this topic and wrap things up here on the podcast. So obviously your diet and nutrition, a balanced diet provides the necessary nutrients to keep the body and mind functioning optimally during demanding projects. So again, once I started shifting around my nutrition, it was essentially the other half of the coin to help me really push my health and fitness back into a positive direction instead of letting it sink into a negative direction. I noticed a huge improvement in my energy levels and a huge improvement in my sustainability of those energy levels. So like I mentioned before, I made the shift to drinking Huel. Once again, not sponsored by them in any way, shape, or form, but I like them, you know, so I have no problem talking about them and sharing them with you guys as a potential resource to help you out. For me, Huel is another tool in the tool bag that just helps me perform better for my life and for my job and stuff like that, and it makes my life much easier. So I drink the Huel Black Powder. It's like 40 grams of protein, I think, 400 calories in it, and it's got a good source of like plant fats and carbs and all that fun stuff in there. So plus a lot of extra vitamins and minerals as well. So what this did for me was it made it much easier in my day-to-day to make sure I was feeding myself and getting in my nutrients. I told you before, I would do this thing where I would just kind of work all day and forget to eat. And I'm sure a lot of us are guilty of this. We'll be out shooting for long hours at a time. We'll be, you know, locked in on an editing project or something at home, and the hours will just fly by. And before you know it, it may be like 8 a.m., 9 a.m. or something like that in the morning, and then you'll look up and the clock will say like 3 p.m., 4 p.m., and all you've had is like a bagel and coffee. Let's be honest, like, it's just not good for you. It's not gonna help your body. So having something like Huel available to me was, again, a quick and easy fix that I could utilize in my day-to-day that made sure I was staying fed. That being said, it does not have to be Huel. If you don't like the taste of something like Huel, or if you don't like drinking liquid calories, or if you just prefer solid food, again, there's nothing wrong with that. The key thing to focus on here is putting the emphasis and the importance on actually, you know, working out some sort of system that you can repeatedly utilize to make sure you're actually eating your food and getting your calories in. Because when you're eating your food and you're getting your calories in, you're fueling your body. And if you're fueling your body with good, clean food, you're gonna notice an extremely huge impact on your productivity, on your ability to focus and feel sharp throughout the day, and just to show up as your best self to your job. So that's it for podcast episode 7, guys. I hope that this material and some of these topics in the podcast that we covered today were helpful, and some of them resonated with you and inspired you to take a little bit better care of yourself if you're not doing so already, and hopefully implement some tips, tricks, and techniques and stuff like that to be able to just make yourself a little bit healthier. As always, if you enjoyed the content, please like, comment, and subscribe for more things like this coming your way. Let us know in the comments below, what would you like the next podcast topic to be about? We've got a couple ideas generated ourselves, talking about potential gear, talking about potential software, and new things just kind of buzzing around in the camera world. But if you've got anything in specific that you want to see or have covered, let me know, drop it in the comments, and I'll do my best to get a video out and cover it in the next episode. So thanks again for watching, guys. I appreciate your time, and I will catch you guys in the next one.